So, today we're talking about the sixth chakra, and this is in our Chakra 2.0 series. And the reason it's a 2.0 series is that we want to really look at the chakras in their perfection. We want to look at how they're designed, and not only how they're designed, but how they actually are functioning inside of us. And so the premise of these talks is to see them all in the light. And what I mean by that is we've lived for millennia now in a very strange world, in a world that's really twisted. And that twist we've sort of adapted to, and we've adopted inside to the point that we think it's us that's twisted. You know, it's like when you live in perhaps a society or a family or an institution that's actually not about expanding us as humans. It's actually about making us do as we're told, almost taking the humanity out of us and making us into robots. And whenever I say this, I always feel like I'm being really negative, but this is really important for the sixth chakra because it's about clear sight. It's about us being able to see what is, and not just what we're being shown, but what we truly see and sense in the world around us. And because the world has been very dark, like you don't have to go through too many history books to really think, wow, it's been a really tough go. You know, there's been a lot of cruelty, a lot of oppression, a lot of control, a lot of suffering. And that's just the way it is. And the weird thing is that up until this point, we've looked at everything through this lens, almost like because we've sort of been entrenched in this darkness, we assume it's human nature. Right? We assume it's us. We assume this is just who I am. Oh, well, you know, I'm only human after all, right? Like, because we have actually come to this place where we've been swimming in this pool for so long, and our ancestors swam in that pool, and our friends are swimming in that pool, that we believe that there's something wrong with us. And recently, things look different. And it didn't really become clear to me until I found this really interesting woman named Cindy Dale, and she teaches all about chakras. I highly recommend checking her out. Really interesting woman. And she had this idea that there were these two worlds running concurrently. There was the shadow world, which is the world I'm talking about, this very strange world that lives in separation, doesn't even know we're part of nature, doesn't know that we're divine creatures. Very strange, right? Then there's this world of light and divine energy and truth. And we would even say things like, oh, like a utopia, and we do it with this look on our face like, ugh, like you think there's such a thing as utopia, right? That we've actually imagined that that's not even possible. And what's really interesting is deep down, like we actually do know this world of light. That is where we know truth. That's where we access wisdom. That's where we know what we know. That's where we are when we feel love. That's where we are when we watch a sunset or stargaze or sit with a good friend and a nice cup of coffee. Right? That beautiful, blissful state. We know it's real, but we just have sort of interpreted as, you know, a moment in time within all the craziness, because we've come to believe that the crazy is normal. So instead, she said, no, this is just this shadow world. But this divine world, this world of light, is actually what reality is. And that really rang true for me. And when you really think about our chakras, which is the foundation of all of these talks, that even how we talk about chakras normally, we talk about them through the filter of the shadow world. Well, the sixth chakra, the first thing we say is, when the sixth chakra is blocked, right? We might say, oh, the sixth chakra is all about intuition. But when it's blocked, you can have lots of headaches and migraines and eyesight problems. Like it's like we just dive right into the dysfunction of what it is to be a divine being in a really crazy world, because it's all we know, right? But in this time, in the year 2022 on Earth right now, I believe we're being asked to look at things differently. That we're being asked to really see the difference between the perfection that's inside of us right now, every single one of us here, no matter what we've ever been through, no matter what we've come from, ancestrally, karmically, all those kind of things. You know, they say that we're in a time of ascension, and what's really interesting about that, besides just getting caught in the words, is what if we're actually meant to see clearly now? What if we aren't meant to be caught in the karmic cycles, in the akashic patterns that we've been replaying, perhaps for lifetimes? What if that time is complete? What if that's why we're having these insights now? What if that's why we're actually seeing the difference between, oh, that's you and this is me? It's kind of like this realization when you were abused as a child. You know, for a long time, very often, we assume that it was us. We assume that we did something wrong, that we asked for it, that somehow I deserved it, even though we know we didn't. Somehow that must be true because that's my reality. That's all I've ever known. And then at some point, through a million breakdowns and difficulties and counseling and somatic therapy and who knows what it takes, all of a sudden something is teased out of us. And we realize that, oh, I was just a child. This person had issues. But this person's issues is not a reflection of me. They just were too intertwined for me to be able to tell the difference. And that's a lot like this shadow world. When we can pull it out and see us for who we truly are in our perfection, and we can see clearly this shadow world that we live in, things make a lot more sense. And then if you imagine that, okay, well then how do we interact? Well, we create an interface. We create an interface in between this perception and this curious world we live in the same way that if I want to get from here to there and it's a deep river, I need a boat. Well, I'm going to create a boat and I'm going to ride the boat. I'm not the boat. I just needed the boat to get there. Or if it's suddenly minus 40 degrees Celsius out, I need a winter coat. I'm not the winter coat. It's just the interface between me and the frigid temperatures outside. Right? Spoken like a true Canadian. Right? So it's really, really interesting to understand the interface that we've created to interact with the world. Right? And it's the same with that abused child. What interface did they have to develop to survive? It's not a character flaw, developing an interface. It's not a weakness, having to create shields and guards and be careful about people. This isn't a weakness. This was a requirement. But as soon as we can tease it out and then see the interface clearly, we understand how perfect we are. You know, and then we can look at the chakras differently as well. And in our talk today, we will talk about what can go amok, obviously, with the sixth chakra and what might live in your interface right now. But what we really want to look at is, why do we have a sixth chakra? Like, to really understand that these chakras are divine energy. They're not getting twisted by the three-dimensional world we're living in. You can't twist up a divine swirling vortex of energy, right? that doesn't get broken, that doesn't get damaged. The only thing that's a muck, and it's not even a muck, the only thing that blocks us from this divinity inside of each one of us is the interface we've had to put up unconsciously to survive. And so that's what we really want to talk about. So, the sixth chakra, it's called Ajna in Sanskrit. Ajna means beyond wisdom. It means insight. It means perception. It means the command post. It also means our connection to Brahman, our connection to the divine. And this is really interesting. When you imagine, we often talk about energy nadis, N-A-D-I, in yoga, understanding how energy flows through the body. And so they say that there's, tens of thousands of nadis flowing through the body, and this is where the prana flows. It flows through these nadis. And so if you picture our chakras, there are three main nadis, big superhighways. The Shushmana, that runs from the first chakra all the way up to the crown. This is when the Kundalini rises, it just, flies up there. That amazing, lovely feeling up your spine. And then there's the Ida and the Pingala. And these are the two main ones that when we do alternate nostril breathing, if we do left nostril breathing, we're stimulating and cleansing Ida. And if we do right nostril breathing, we're stimulating Pingala. And Ida is all the things that we bring in to our world, and Pingala are all the things we release. Well, the way that these two work is that they actually spiral and intersect with each chakra. So if you imagine beginning at your root chakra, the Shushmana runs up the center, and then Ida and Pingala go up like this, swirling through the chakras like this, connecting them all up. And where do they land? Here. This is where they come together, right? So this is where we sew up our human experience, right? Everything lands here and then connects directly into the seventh. So this is a very, very powerful energy center when you imagine what this is sewing up, right? We look at our first chakra. Our first chakra is experiencing the world in our most physical way. We're experiencing abundance. We're experiencing nature. We're experiencing the village. We're experiencing how we fit here. And then those guys come up to the second chakra and they go, oh yes, and we interact with others and we interact with the world and we interact with this and how things flow. And then they come up to the third chakra, and the third chakra says, aha, and this is how my mission fits into all of this. And these are my philosophies and thoughts about how I'm going to live my life and who I really am and why I'm different and what's my uniqueness. And we come up into the fourth, and we're going to come up into the fourth, and we feel this divine love, right, for the world, like just this genuine joy beyond anything going on in the lower chakras. Here we just feel love for people, love for chocolate, love for puppies, love for sunsets. It's almost like this is the place where we really get to love being here. Then up here, we have all this information coming in and sharing and expressing our soul and how we draw and write and share and speak and all that kind of thing. So all these things are going up and landing in this interesting space. And of course, so this goes two ways. On the one hand, all of these interesting chakras are informing us, right? We're gathering information from the world. It's fascinating. It's a fascinating world. There's a million. When you think of all the inputs that you have in a day, all from all of these chakras landing here, right? But it goes the other way too, that the insight that we receive from here and the vision that we have of the world also informs our expression, our love, who we are, how we relate, how we fit in. Like this informs it all, right? Because they're really all one. We're just looking at them separately. So ajna is really, really interesting. And that's where, imagine this being the command post. Why does ajna mean command post? Well, imagine that this is actually how we navigate the world. That's why we were given ajna. That's why we were given intuition, insight, perception, right? And imagine we're navigating beyond these eyes, right? This is that simple thing where you're walking down the street and you know that where you want to go is down there, but something tells you to go around. You know, it's that simple. I mean, that's just walking down the street, but it can be anything. It can be a conversation where you want to say this in reaction, but something tells you, just take a breath here. Wait. Listen. Ask for guidance. There's better guidance coming. And that's where this all is. This is where we're not going to respond from our second chakra. We're going to listen here instead. And now imagine navigating your life from that place. That when you wake up in the morning, you can see your to-do list. You can see it. But you also check in here and you ask. Because this is our connection to the big picture, right? As humans living here, we can so easily get caught in the weeds, right? We can so easily get caught in the details of the to-do list that we created for ourselves today, or that society created, or that our parents created, or that whatever, that teacher in school that affected us so much that said discipline is the answer, or whatever. What if that isn't what we're supposed to be doing today? You know, we're here on Insight Timer. It's literally about insight. We are seeking a higher guidance. We want to access our most expansive selves. Where are we going to hear that? Right? Where are we going to hear it? This is where we hear it. This is where we see it, right? So this is what this ajna is. It's this literally bright, shining light. They often attribute light and illumination to our third eye, right? To our sixth sense. So imagine this in perfection. Imagine you right now having this beautiful, fully functioning ajna, which we all have right now. We all have a fully functioning ajna. So what's it like walking through the world? So one, we are connected to the greater picture. We see more than with these eyes. And very often, because we've gotten so ethereal, we don't always have words for it. So just because we don't have words for it doesn't mean it isn't real. It's almost like we have to trust the feeling, but it's a different feeling than a heart feeling or a gut feeling or a emotional feeling. It's like a sense, right? It's like I don't know why, but this seems to be the truth. Or I don't know why, but that doesn't seem like the truth, right? There's a different litmus strip happening up here. So the whole point, the whole function of this chakra is to see what's really going on. And what's really interesting about that is, I think we were talking about this in a class yesterday somewhere. Isn't it interesting that we believe that we only have 5 senses? Like we were taught that we only have 5 senses. And then we say, oh yeah, well then there's that 6th sense, for if you believe in that stuff, or for those hippie people, or for special people, they have 6 senses, or maybe 7 senses, or whatever. But isn't it funny that someone back in history decided that human beings have 5 senses. Why? Why did we assume that? Was that just our state of consciousness, that we were only aware of what we could see, hear, taste, smell, and touch? Is that why? Now imagine, and this is one of the reasons we have so many issues with our sixth chakra in this shadow world, is because we don't believe that this is a real sense. Because we've been deeply ingrained and taught that the 5 senses are real. Because these are the physical things. These are the things you can prove to other people. You can show. Someone else will experience it the same way you will. Obviously, that's what makes it real. But because we believe that, it's like we've cut off our connection to the 6th and 7th chakras. Because, well, there's only 5 senses anyway. So let's assume that that guy was wrong. Let's assume that whoever began that theory was wrong. You know, it's really funny how many theories like that there are that weren't even what the original guy said. You know, it's like Darwinism. When you actually read Darwin's original notes and his original thoughts, what today is considered Darwinism, Darwin never said. It's literally an interpretation of something he said. He didn't say it, and he actually spoke against it. It's very interesting. So let's not blame the guy who said there was only 5 senses, because someone might have just misinterpreted it. He might have said there's only 5 known senses or something. So now let's imagine that we are designed to have a fully functioning ajna, which means that we not only see through our eyes, we also sense, whatever we want to call them, spidey senses, awarenesses, whatever, and that this is completely normal, and we are meant to guide our life this way, right? And that when something's going on around us, that we actually see more than what's going on. We don't just see the 2 people fighting. We see, you know, it's like in the Celestine prophecy, when, you know, he talked about seeing the auras and seeing the colors of the auras changing and seeing beyond just what was going on in the physical world. And even being able to look at ourselves clearly. This isn't just eyesight. To really look at ourselves clearly. We can look at the facts. We can look at our circumstances. We can look at what we can write down and explain to people. But then we can sit in meditation, really connect here, and we can see what's really going on, right? We can really see ourselves clearly as a soul, you know, and whether it's a confused soul or a, you know, right on path soul, it doesn't matter. You know, again, there's no judgment of whether we're on path, off path. Like, it's not about that. That's weird dualistic thinking, right? We're just who we are. This is just me right now. Like, whatever, you know, me on a journey. Whether I'm going up the hill or down the hill, just on a journey, right? Sorry, I lost my thought. I lost my train of thought. It went somewhere. So we see ourselves clearly. So now let's imagine this. In perfection, we see what's really going on in the world. We understand truth. We understand ourselves. We understand you, because this is the seat of understanding. This is where we understand the inner and outer worlds, and we're all designed to do it, right? Every one of us has this capacity. So now we get dropped into this very strange world. This shadow world, we'll call it. There's not a lot of truth in the shadow world. It's like a weird Truman Show. If you've ever seen that movie, right? There's so much illusion in the world. There's so much manipulation and control and things that just aren't true, but they're being but we're supposed to pretend they're true. You know, it's like even the idea that these people are above these people. whether we consider them, oh, these are the royalties, these are the famous people, these are the rich people, these are the men, these are the straight people, these are the white people, these are the tall people, these are the women with big boobs, these are the men with big muscles, like whatever it is, we've done this weird leveling. The idea that one human is somehow more interesting, important, attractive than another. This is a foundational untruth. It's just not even real. And yet we are living in a world where this is almost a foundation. We're supposed to pretend it's a truth. So you can imagine your third eye, your ajna, observing this curiosity and looking at people bowing down to movie stars, bowing down to people because they've decided that they are royalty, bowing down to people because they believe that they are wealthy and therefore more interesting and they deserve to control others. All these things. How is our poor ajna supposed to function? And everywhere around you, you see it in movies, you see it in the news, you hear it in your culture, you hear it at the dinner table, you hear it everywhere. So your ajna is literally like just staring at people going, really? And of course, if this happens at a young enough age, we'll start to think that maybe our perception is wrong. Maybe there is something wrong with me. Maybe I don't fit in. I just don't see the world like other people. Maybe I'm an alien. Maybe I'm weird. Right? But the truth is, we just always saw the truth. Period. I remember when my kids were little, when I was sick in 1999, one of my big challenges was to learn to express my emotions, to actually be honest, because that's what the emotions are, right? They reflect our truth. They reflect our true response to the world around us, the shadow world. That's why the emotions are so important, because they actually help us navigate in that world. But I had a belief at the time that I never wanted my children to be upset because I was upset. I didn't want to lay that on them. I always wanted to present a happy face and a safe place for them. Like this, it was good intentioned. But what that meant was burying my truth, burying my emotions, burying how I was really feeling. And I was really suffering with a lot of depression, especially in the early years when the kids were little and we'd bought the farm and we were just maxed right out, And so I was sick when my kids were about 2 and 4 years old. Well, for anyone who's ever been around 2 and 4-year-olds, one, they like to pick at each other and they don't like ever having no said to them, and they're a little difficult. These are difficult times. And I remember one time the kids were just at each other, like just he touched me and she's got my toy and he's got this and that, just that kind of sound that literally makes you just, your whole being just wants to fall apart. And of course, I was very busy burying the emotions I was having, whether I was having issues with Wayne or I was mad about the farm or I was, who knows what was going on. I could have been mad at my in-laws. I could have been mad at all of them. Burying all of that emotion all at the same time. And whatever it was, I remember, and I've told you guys this story many times, and I remember coming up the stairs with my bucket of laundry under my arm, and the kids were in Taylor's room, and they're just at each other, and of course, when kids fight, but they really want you to hear it, so they amp it up a little bit more, so that you realize that the other person's definitely in the wrong. Like it was just, and I remember just giving up. Like they were fighting, and it didn't matter what I said, they didn't stop, and I just started crying, and I broke, and I just sort of slid down the wall onto the floor. And they both stopped fighting, and Aaron toddles over to me and he says, "What's wrong, Mummy?" And I said, "I'm just so sad." He said, And he put his little hand on my shoulder and slid down the wall beside me and said, yeah, I get like that too, right? And in that moment, whether it's true or not, what I now believe because of that is that children know when we're upset. They know that when what I'm saying and the face I'm putting on does not line up with what they're feeling off of my emotional body. Right? Can you imagine as a child? I am God to them. Right? I am their mother. I protect them, I feed them, I brought them into this world. I am the most significant person in their life. And they feel my energetic body, not only just through the umbilical cord, but literally emoting, like we all feel each other's emotions all the time. So these children are so deeply connected to my emotional body. And so all they feel is sadness and despair and frustration and probably buried anger. But what do they see? Mommy's fine. Mommy's fine. Right? It's creepy. And I was doing this with the best intention. So you imagine the little cognitive dissonance in their ajna, in their perfectly functioning sixth chakra. They know something's wrong with me, but I'm lying to them. I am creating an illusion that I want them to believe. And this is the most innocent aspect. Right? This is just a mother just wanting to let their kids have a happy childhood. And now if we extend that out into the world, the illusion is real. It gets a huge deal. So the fact that our ajna is hurting big time, it's not really rocket science, right? So we can certainly ourselves understand the effects of this. What could be in our interface between ourselves and the outside world, right? Even look at my kids, right? What could they have learned in their interface? Well, Mommy isn't going to tell us the truth. Something deep inside of them knows that I'm not going to be honest with them. Isn't that awful? When my deepest desire and intention was to be close to them and to be able to have this open relationship, but something in my training or something in my pride or something in my misunderstanding of emotions, that by being sad, I was somehow laying that on them, and that actually would have caused distance between us. They could have developed that in their field, right? We go out into the world and we even go to school. Like even look at school and you're sitting there and theoretically you're told that we're learning. We're learning important things for the world. And you have to listen to the teacher because the teacher's important and they're teaching you important things. And you're sitting there and your ajna is like, this isn't really healthy. Like, we could be outside playing or we could be doing this or I'm not interested in this. I actually should be doing this, but we're not allowed and blah, 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 blah. And so we start setting up, well, there must be something wrong with me or maybe I have, an attention problem or I have this or, or I'm just a bad person or I'm trouble or I'm a rebel or I'm this. And we start labeling ourselves unconsciously at a very young level, at a very young age. So anyway, there's lots of places where this can go awry, right? You think of even emotional issues. Because if we don't trust our sense of things, if we don't trust that little voice inside that says, turn left, run, say yes. Like if we don't trust that, what's our emotional being? We're going to be completely disconnected from our emotions, right? Because our sadness will help inform this. Our happiness will inform this. Our frustration will inform this. And we're going to just ignore all that because we need to make that person happy or we need to fit in or we need to keep that job or we need to whatever. right? So you can imagine the emotional state we're now in. You can imagine the mental state we can be in. So we can shake all that off because we all can understand the dysfunction that can happen when we aren't allowed to follow our intuition, right? One of the other beautiful perceptions of the sixth chakra, and this was something that Cindy Dale talked about too, was that she saw them as having three parts. So in your sixth chakra, the back part is where we receive the possibilities, right? So all the possibilities kind of come in the back of the third eye. And then in the center, there's this empty space where the possibilities play, and they kind of grow and ponder and play with each other. And in that empty space, they do this. And then eventually you make a decision and you project it out into the world. And I find that fascinating because I don't know about you, but I can feel that. I can feel that when ideas come in, right? Because this is also the seat of imagination, creative thought, all of these things. So you have all these ideas that come in, and then they seem to go into this holding place where they just kind of go, is this a real thing? Is the timing right for this? Is it a now? Is it reasonable? Like, what is it? And it kind of sits and plays there. And then we act on it. We put it out into the world. We project it. We do the thing, which I find fascinating. Can you imagine just happily living like that? That perceptions come in, and the perceptions could be anything. They could be about a relationship, right? We can actually see the 3D model of what's happening, but we also can see what else is happening with this eye. And everything we start to observe through this eye, we put into that lovely empty space. And we just let it live there, kind of like we're painting a picture. And we kind of keep bringing all these interesting perceptions in. But we kind of know when it isn't complete yet. Like, there's still more I need to see here. And it keeps coming in, it keeps coming in, it keeps coming in. All of a sudden it goes, aha. And it all comes together and it's released. That's often what intuition feels like. It isn't just a single thought and shot out into the world. It is a real weaving in there, right? And it's interesting too, and whether it's because it's in these higher chakras, there's no sense of urgency with intuition. It's not like that. It's like it all comes in, but we're not playing in the third dimension, right? We're not playing in this time-space continuum. We're bringing imagination and creative thought and ideas in and just sitting with it. It's actually a very neutral space, right? Because when you think of how the Ida and Pingala, like they're doing this through all the chakras, this is a lot of duality down here, right? In a good way. Nothing wrong with duality. That's what lets us enjoy chocolate, right? But they all come up and they come together. So now we're entering the oneness, right? We're no longer trapped by the time-space continuum here, which is why when ideas come in, we can wait for their proper time. And they may even disappear. Some perception might have come in, and it was just meant to inform us of something and then to disappear. Or it might have just been meant to inform us about another topic, and then it disappears. It never had to be manifest. It was just an important perception in the moment, right? And so when you imagine the other interesting thing about the ajna, they also see it as the connection between the left and the right brain, like kind of like the corpus callosum, right? Like you have your right brain and your left brain. And theoretically, your left brain is all about structure, the sort of our masculine side, and our structure, math, science, logic, all that kind of thing. And then the right brain is the flow. It's the music, it's the art, it's the creativity, it's the expansiveness, it's the chaos, it's all that. So within each of us, we have this beautiful yin-yang perception in our brain, then we have this corpus callosum down here, which is the connector of the left and right brains. And I think I've told you guys before that we've talked about myelination in the brain and how when we learn new things, the gray matter in our brain, as soon as we're learning something, the gray matter, a white myelin sheath is formed over the gray matter. And then we've truly learned something and it becomes like a superhighway, right? It's like you learn to play the piano and the first time it's really hard because it's all gray matter and it's all confused. But then bit by bit, this is why small change over time is so powerful. Because if we give ourselves time to let our brains myelinate with the new change, it becomes so effortless, right? But when we throw ourselves in and then we don't understand why all of our raw gray matter couldn't figure it out, that's just because that's how humans aren't made, right? So when we learn something, the gray matter has this beautiful white myelin sheath form over it. Well, the wild thing is, when Einstein died, they, of course, studied his brain because that's what we do. And they took his brain out and they said that his corpus callosum at that time was the most heavily myelinated corpus callosum they'd ever seen. And when you think of Einstein, right? And you think of ajna and you think of wisdom and you think of creative thought and the power of inspiration, Einstein's one of the most brilliant examples there is because he married the left and right. He married the masculine, feminine, the logic and the insight. He married these together. And what happens when you marry them together? You experience oneness. You experience this incredible single-pointed bliss, right? This inner calm. You know, Einstein, incredibly accomplished mathematician and scientist, but he also knew the importance of dreaming and pondering and having thought experiments and wondering. And he would completely let himself fly in that space. And then when he was finished, he would come back in and he would see how that danced with the math. And then he would explore again. And then how does it dance with the math? And that is the ultimate play of ajna, right? We have this access to this incredible, infinite potential, right? All the possibilities are ours. We have all of these insights. We have all of these incredible ideas that come in, but they have to come in and then play with the world, right? They have to play with the world around us. They have to play with what's possible. We have to play with the time-space continuum that we are playing in, right? And we just dance with it. No attachment. It doesn't matter whether it happens. Great ideas are just great ideas. Or maybe they're not even my idea. Maybe I'm picking up on someone else's ajna, right? Who knows, right? So the big key, just to sum up, and then I'll answer any questions you may have. So how do we do this? How do we live in the clarity of ajna? How do we do that? Right? We trust ourselves. We trust our perception of things. Even if we cannot put words to it, we're allowed to say things like, I don't know why, but that doesn't sound right. I don't know why, but I feel called to do this. We can do that. Maybe later words will fill in or not, but there's a sense of truth. You know, and what's really interesting about this is when the people around you are tuned in with their own sense of truth, when they know what that feels like, when they know what the frequency is or the vibration is of truth, when you speak this, they'll say, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. They won't be able to articulate it either, but they'll sense that you're onto something. You know, my friend Nelda that I talk about, my intuitive friend, she'll say, oh, you're catching the edge of that. Let's keep going with this. That's and it's the same thing. We know what it feels like to hit on a truth or to hit on an idea or a possibility whose time has come. Oh, this is important. Yes, let's continue down this path. And it's very possible that if when we're interacting with people who aren't connecting with that, who aren't listening to their own truth, they won't understand. But that's okay. It doesn't have to be a frustration piece because we're seeing clearly. We see others clearly, not with judgment or anything like that. We just simply see clearly and we say, yeah, that's cool. It's raining. I don't expect to go to the beach. This isn't how you see it. Awesome. I see that. And we don't have to get upset about it, right? Ajna up here, this is our real command post. Our command post isn't all judgmental and worrying about other people seeing it our way, right? It's our connection to the cosmos, right? Other things we can do to help this is pranayama, meditation. This is really why we meditate, right? Why do we sit? Like when you think of how many times we sit straight, why do we sit with a straight spine? Yes, to make sure our lungs can expand and we can breathe deeply and have proper pranayama, right? But we align our body. Asana is so important, right? How we sit, that I am fully aligned from the earth to the heavens, and I am the beautiful conduit here. And why do we roll our eyes up and look at our third eye? Why do we do that? Because we're listening. And when we practice pranayama or we practice meditation techniques, as the thoughts come in, it's like, no, no, no. It's funny, this morning I was meditating and I was using that technique. It's called neti neti. And it literally means not this, not that. Because every so often, if I have thoughts that are like swarms of mosquitoes or something, just not wanting me to see clearly, I'll use this neti neti, which is very different than a lot of meditation techniques. And I sit there, and as a thought pops in, I actually say no. Instead of letting it float through like a fluffy cloud, I say no. And it's like, no, no, no. And it's so interesting because then eventually you have this beautiful clarity, like you have this beautiful emptiness. And in that emptiness, we can hear the guidance, right? It's literally like we're clearing our ajna of anything that doesn't belong there right now. And pranayamas help us get out of the patterns that also don't let us see clearly. And the other thing is to really see ourselves clearly, right? Once we really understand our own filters, once we understand our own interface, the reasons we maybe over our lifetime have learned to not trust our intuition, to not trust our spidey senses, to not trust our emotions. We don't have to judge it. We just have to see it. And we see, oh, I see that. And then we can ask ourselves, am I done with that? Am I still a little uncomfortable telling the truth? Maybe I still want to tell some white lies sometimes, just to make things easier at the family dinner. As long as we're conscious of it, we're one step closer to understanding how to do it in a kind way, right? So that's really the key to doing it, is just really, one, knowing that your ajna is perfect. That's it. To know that you're not broken. Everything's wonderful. That you've developed important filters because the world wouldn't let us be intuitive. You know, we were literally placed in chairs and told not to move no matter what we thought. Right? And that's okay. We're bigger now. We can make different choices. You know, we have a lot more autonomy than we ever did before. But that's the beginning of it all. And it's fun. It's fun to play here, right? It's fun to walk through the world navigating from this other place. That's like when people say to me, they'll say, wow, that's an amazing thing that, that happened to you or that you did or whatever. And I always have this sense that, but it wasn't my idea. Like I always have this weird thing that I can't own anything that I ever do because it just like came to me. And then all of a sudden it went and then it existed. And it's like when we play here, it's like we're along for the ride as much as anybody else is. It's really fun. It's like just like being on the most exciting roller coaster, but you totally trust it and it's just super fun. So, fully connecting to our ajna and trusting it, it's a really beautiful way to live. I think the frustration piece I experience is that as a human, connecting with others is part of being human. But most of the people I interact with on a daily basis are not interested in knowing that there is a truth, let alone knowing their truth or even knowing what I'm talking about. It all seems like a surface level or material level. I love to go deep and have the conversations we have here. How can I learn to not be frustrated with this? I don't want to change anyone or force them to think outside the box. It would be nice to have conversations outside of the superficial. I'm trying to think of how I ended up with so many people in my world who love deep conversation. One, I think they appeared, but I also think that there's this moment like you're chatting with someone and they say something and you simply don't follow their lead. When you're having a conversation and you kind of match them, and instead to actually breathe, ask here. This is a huge thing, right? That you will get guidance here. If you close your eyes and you say, I would love to have a deeper conversation right now. How do I do it? And listen. And maybe you say, I'd love to talk about this. And just mention something. And you'll be surprised. We might just be talking on the wrong topic. But I trust this so much. All the time. Like literally, especially in arguments, I will always go into this quiet space and listen and then say what comes to me. So it could be that even the people around you might be able to go deeper than you think. But even as we practice listening ourselves and allowing this to guide our conversations, who knows, maybe you're at a gathering and someone hears you talking and you share it and they go, wow, I'd like to talk more about that. Who knows? How do we connect with our ajna? I just joined and I'm struggling with this so much to feel what I really want. It's really just a practice, right? And there's a couple of ways you can do it. Like you can, Neil Donald Walsh, who wrote Conversations with God. One of the things I love about his books was that his journaling became a conversation with God. Well, what if your journaling was a conversation with your ajna? Right? So before we try it out in the world, where it's a bit scarier, what if you try it journaling? And you simply, excuse me, apparently my stomach's a little hungry. Imagine you actually journal and you ask a question and you allow the pen to answer you. And then you ask another question and allow the pen to answer you and start to really dialogue with your highest self, to dialogue with your true perceptions and kind of get comfortable with it just on your own, And if you don't like to write, maybe you like to just talk out loud, right? You can have a conversation with yourself, right? And then it's almost like as we start to blend those perceptions with this world around us that doesn't necessarily fit right now, everything's changing all the time. Even our relationships with people are changing all the time, right? So it's nice to have a space where you can kind of dance with that, whether it's journaling or drawing or dancing, however you need to do to kind of play with these ideas. You know, are there some questions that I ask in particular? Half the time when I'm journaling like that, it's like, what the hell is going on? And then I kind of have to get my yayas out. I have to get a little angry because I tend to be I tend to bury that, and then I have to get that out, and then I start asking better questions like, is there action I need to take? Is there something I need to do? Is there something I need to understand? But oftentimes it's a specific for the situation, right? So it's almost like, what's the question I'd like to ask? Or if I had a guru sitting there, what question would I ask them? Right? Because this is our inner guru, right? That's our inner teacher. My partner in business suggests that I prefer to live in the ethereal realm. Well, and what's interesting about that is, again, ajna is the marriage of the two, right? It's the marriage of the ethereal realm and real practicality. You know, it's not about one or the other. It is the connector point of the structure of the left brain and the ethereal flow of the right. Right? And so that's what's really fun, is to be able to take all these beautiful thoughts. Like, I have 1,000 ideas a day, but they're not all meant for today. You know, it's that wonderful, was it Rumi that said, the sense of the quote, I can't think what the quote is, but it's all about water in a pitcher, that we are the ocean, but each day can only hold a pitcher of water. Right? So we can have access to the ocean, but what is meant for today? Right? And what's practical for today? You know, it's, I love that. I love being able to be expansive and fully exist here on the planet. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you have a wonderful day.